If you search Google for polls on the topic LGBT in schools, the results are going to be overwhelmingly mainstream media-sponsored polls showing that Americans oppose Governor Ron DeSantis' Florida Parental Rights in Education Act, or in Democrat marketing parlance, the Don't Say Gay bill. What you won't see in the results is polling coverage of the underlying issue. Millions of parents are concerned that their public school students are being exposed to sexually explicit and age-inappropriate content. It hasn't even been 12 months since this hot-button issue helped propel Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin to a surprise victory. Want to know what America thinks? Well, it's a good thing that we are one of the only pollsters who will illuminate you on this issue. First, let's clear the air about Florida's bill. I took a look at the very first poll in Google search results, and ABC-Ipsos shows 62% opposition to the bill. But here's the problem. The poll was adults, not likely voters, only 622 respondents, didn't use the actual text of the bill, didn't disclose party weighting, and if you read the methodology, they even asked respondents if they identified as LGBT, and admittedly oversampled those who said yes in a poll about LGBT issues. Our scientifically conducted 1,000 likely voter poll, taken the very same week, used the actual text of the law, our typical likely voter weighting, and found that 62% actually supported the law and only 39% opposed. But now our actual topic. Thanks to the Capital Resource Institute, we polled 1,000 nationwide likely voters last week with about every question we could think of pertaining to LGBT and sexually explicit material in public schools, so that you'll get the straight facts on Americans' concerns. And since this is a publicly sponsored poll, you can get the crosstabs below and follow along. First, how concerned are you that school-aged children are being exposed to sexual material that is not age-appropriate? 77% say concerned, 55% of which say very. But check out the breakdown by party. 94% of Republicans, 77% of independents, and only 61% of Democrats are concerned. The difference is even more pronounced by ideology, with 80% of conservatives very concerned and only 22% of liberals. Because this was a standalone poll, we also have the luxury of additional demographic data. Here, 76% of those who identify as very religious are also very concerned, but only 29% of those who are not at all religious are very concerned. The sentiment is even stronger for requiring schools to inform parents about what is being taught to their children. 89% of voters say it's important, and 70% say very important. By party, 85% of Republicans, 69% of independents, and 56% of Democrats also say very important. But the results are even closer when you look at those who say it's at least somewhat important. 98% of Republicans, wow, but also 86% of independents and 84% of Democrats. For all intents and purposes, that's about as bipartisan as it gets. Only 40% of voters at least somewhat support teaching children in schools about homosexual lifestyles, 22% of which strongly support it, but 54% are opposed. And there's a really stark difference here in the party results, with 62% of Democrats supporting it, but only 20% of Republicans and only 35% of independents agreeing. Now, support for teaching children about transsexualism. 33% support it, 18% of which said strongly. 56% of Democrats support it, but only 15% of Republicans and only 28% of independents agree. Next, we asked whether voters support or oppose public schools teaching children how to perform sex acts. That has only 20% support, while 76% of voters oppose it. But Democrat support for this one was down to 32%, and that compares to 10% and 16% for Republicans and independents. 88% of Republicans, 80% of independents, but only 61% of Democrats were opposed. Skipping ahead a little bit in the poll, we asked if books containing explicit sexual depictions of sex acts, including homosexual sex acts, should be present in public elementary schools. And before we ask, yes, this question was asked because there are books like this present in some elementary school libraries. Full disclosure, we also asked if they should be in high school and middle school libraries, but you can see the crosstabs for those responses. 9% said yes, and 85% said no. And here are the party breakdowns. Democrats are twice as likely as Republicans or independents to support this, but the number is only 14%. 18 to 39-year-old voters were most likely to say yes, and in a strange surprise, people who said they attend religious services at least once a month were much more likely to say yes than those who said rarely. Check that one out yourself. We also asked a series of questions requesting voters to opine on what age it's appropriate to teach students about a few of these different topics. The first is LGBT lifestyles. Only 31% of voters say before the age of 14, but the number is 16% for Republicans, 28% for independents, but 48% for Democrats. 19% of Democrats think children should be exposed to LGBT lifestyles before the age of 10, but only 2% of Republicans agree. 48% of Republicans think students shouldn't be exposed to this topic until they're at least 16 to 18, and 29% and only 19% of independents and Democrats agree. The next age question focused on explicit depictions of sexual acts. Only 19% of voters say that kids before the age of 14 should be exposed to that. And 11% of Republicans, 17% of independents, and 29% of Democrats agree. We also got a lot of not sures for that question, but 36% of all voters, 48% of Republicans, 36% of independents, and 26% of Democrats say at least age 17. The final question was about whether students should be exposed to homosexual dating apps. This is in response to reports that some teachers are holding lessons about how to use Grindr. Only 22% of voters say that kids should be exposed to this before the age of 16. And the party breakdowns are 14% for Republicans, 16% for independents, but twice as many Democrats, 33%. It's easy to look at this and draw conclusions like Democrats are twice as likely as anybody else to think children should be exposed to homosexual dating apps by age 16. But first, take note of how many people responding to this question just absolutely had no clue how to answer. If you have the crosstabs in hand, you can also look out to the right and see that 30% of voters who strongly approve of Biden think kids should be exposed to these apps by 16, but only 7% of voters who strongly disapprove of Biden agree. We hope this poll has been enlightening. Rasmussen Reports doesn't take money from political parties and always discloses the name of an organization who has sponsored a public poll. As a result, most of our support comes from readers, subscribers, and advertisers. It would be a huge help if you could subscribe to our channel by clicking the button that's just about to appear, so truth about American public opinion gets out there. Also, if you missed it, we have a great video from last week walking you through how to read poll crosstabs. Take a look, and thank you.